There's an urgency in what we do here at the center. We need lots of participation. We need lots of help. We've been told that in this decade, we have to make changes in society that reflect a very new idea, that instead of being destroyers of the earth, to be co-creators.
For the past 20 years, Holy Cross Centre for Ecology and Spirituality in Port Burwell, Ontario, has been a place for people to make connections between their faith lives and their concerns for the environment.
There is the question of what type of spiritual practice or discipline goes with the type of vision or the type of religious sensitivity that we're suggesting here. I've suggested at times that it's simply looking over a landscape or observing the wonders that are splashed so abundantly about us, the gorgeous world in which we live. But along with it, there is this sense of a deep interior quiet, a deep stillness that sustains a person or sustains our society.
Every year, a cycle of retreats, weekends, and seminars at the Centre culminates in a summer colloquium with Father Thomas Berry, a Passionist priest whose voice has become one of the most important links between science and theology. Father Berry and his longtime associate, physicist Brian Swim, recently published their book, The Universe Story, the subject of this year's colloquium, and a big enough attraction for overflow crowds who gathered in a tent on the center's grounds.
The point is, just to be in the presence of Thomas is an irreversible transformation of consciousness.
It's wonderful to be here with a gathering this year. I suppose we have been meeting here for some 10, 12 years or more. Our meeting this year is a culmination. So much effort has gone into the work of articulating a vision at the order of magnitude that is needed to deal with the issues of our times. The story of the universe, or the universe story as we have written it, can be considered as the epic work of our times, as the interpretation of the past, the identity of the present, and the guide to the future. It's not exactly because of its authors, but it's because we have been able to identify the story that's told by the universe itself. It's the story that we have told in the light of so much other effort that has come into being, but no one has put it together so much in such a significant way. It needs to be improved upon. It needs to be written over and over again. The most important contribution of this work, as we see it, is to begin the task by this recognition that our immense effort at a scientific understanding of the universe culminates in a supreme epic story beyond anything that humans have yet been able to narrate so fully from empirical data. A bit heavy. But it's on those dimensions that we must think. Because, and one of the reasons is this, The effort to respond effectively to the pathology of destruction that is seized upon the industrial world of our times has taken control of the planet Earth, its resources, the media, the financial structures, the food. It's taken control of just about everything. Now, this is the next thing that I'll read is something that needs to be understood with a certain clarity. While the human telling of the story is done by the authors, the story itself is told in every star that shines in the sky, in the shape and movement and sound of every earthly mode of being, in the song of a bird, the shape of a leaf, and the feel of the rain. We wish simply to bring the story to human consciousness and to celebrate the story as this is possible for us now that we understand for the first time, from empirical observation, the sequence of transformations that the universe has gone through in arriving at its present form. To know, reflect on, and celebrate this story and the deep mysteries of existence manifested through the story is seen as the proper role of the human in the universe.
Passionist priest Father Thomas Berry is one of our time's most important thinkers in the current rapprochement between science and religion. This year, his longtime colleague, physicist and cosmologist Brian Swim, came with him to Holy Cross Centre for Ecology and Spirituality in Port Burwell, Ontario, to celebrate the publication of their recent book, The Universe Story. Brian Swim stopped off first at Convocation Hall at University of Toronto to deliver the first annual Elliott Allen Institute for Theology and Ecology lecture.
But in the book, what we're celebrating is what we regard as the most significant discovery in science, not just the 20th century, but the whole scientific enterprise, namely cosmogenesis. The discovery that the universe is a developing reality. The universe has a beginning. The universe develops. The universe is going somewhere. We are the generation that is discovering its place in the story of the universe. No other generation will ever discover its place in the story of the universe for the first time, the way we are. The challenge before us is, what does it mean to be human in this ongoing developing universe? You see, before, the idea of structure in the universe was not a real problem for scientists, because we had the idea that it was a universe that has been around for an infinite number of years. So if you have a really complex structure like a butterfly, well, if you have enough time and the atoms bounce together enough, eventually butterflies. But suddenly, if you only have 15 billion years, there's no way in which we could get to butterflies with a random or accidental universe. After 15 billion years, we wouldn't even have complex molecules. And so the discovery of cosmogenesis is a discovery that the universe is about something. It is a universe that is biased, as opposed to being a non-committal universe that we had grown so used to.
In The Universe Story, Brian Swim and Thomas Berry talk about how this notion of cosmogenesis, that the universe is biased, that it evolved with intention, provided 20th century science with a great divide. Not even Albert Einstein could come to terms with it.
Einstein found it too hard to take. This is the guy that had no difficulty with relativity. He had no difficulty thinking about how mass and energy are different forms of each other. But when he thought about time having a beginning and the universe expanding in all directions, it was beyond what he was prepared to accept about the universe, and so he changed his equations and published them in altered form. He denied that what he had come to.
But the universe proceeded rapidly. Each new faced the predisposition for the next, until at last it was ready to support human life. Humans in turn went from phase to phase, each one of their discoveries providing the launching pad for a change in what it meant to be human.
2 million years ago, humans invented tools in Africa. And about 1.5 million years ago, humans arrived, so it took them 500,000 years, from the use of tools to the use of fire. The discovery of fire 1.5 million years ago was an epic event in the story of the human. The fire led them out of Africa, up into the north, and then, by contemplating the fire, they reinvented what it meant to be human. They invented language. They developed a temperate form of the human. And here we are. We are the result of that. So this vast transformation of the human from the early hominids eventually into language-speaking Homo sapiens.
And now the era of science and technology, the whole new human understanding of the universe story and our unfolding part in it. Who and what are we becoming? It is a question for science and theology to answer together.
We have been, over the last several centuries, we have been moving into a new kind of fire. We say science, we say technology. We have moved into a region of power that was even beyond the imagination of earlier cultural epochs. I mean, we just surrounded ourselves. And just like the former humans, we have left behind our former biological niche. But we're using an old mind to deal with it. We have catapulted ourselves out of a former world, and yet we don't have a developed understanding of our world or of our role in it.
Coming to terms with ourselves as religious people in the technological era begins with the understanding that there is now, for the first time in human history, the scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning 15 billion years ago, and that it proceeded with intention toward biological life as we know it on Earth. Passionist priest Father Thomas Berry and physicist Brian Swim are cosmologists whose recent book, The Universe Story, looks at the new scientific knowledge as sacred knowledge. To date, however, humans have not quite come to terms with the implications.
What escapes us is the magnitude of what we're involved in. It's the magnitude. I think our moment, from a biological standpoint, is captured by this image. You know, for insects, they don't cool down the way mammals do. Insects, very early on, go back maybe 400 million years, and the insects developed a way, a little brush-like device of cooling its body down, a thermoregulator. Then this great moment came. One insect was cooling itself down, and suddenly it lifted off into flight. The thermoregulator had transformed qualitatively from cooling the body down to lifting it off into the atmosphere. Now, imagine if you were that insect, okay? This is a new experience. You're suddenly having to navigate a completely different world. And chances are, the mind that works really good, working around on the ground between the grass and so forth, is not going to work flying through the air. So what took place then was, of course, transformation, a new species developing. I think our situation is just like that. We've lifted off in many ways. We're certainly above the ground, no longer grounded, but we've lifted off into a new understanding, a new realm. And our difficulty is that we're trying to go forward using a mind that is now clearly maladaptive.
So how do we become appropriately adapted to our new knowledge, this new power to fly? How do we begin to see the life we have been given, the role we have been given, and see it with wonder and awe? For Brian Swimme and Father Thomas Berry, it begins in learning about the universe story itself, especially in that chapter about a certain star Swimme and Berry chose to call Tiamat, in honor of an ancient Mediterranean deity whose dismembered body divided into heaven and earth.
To think of the being, this particular star, and its particular work under the title of a person, Tiamat, a name, it helped me realize that my story and your story, our story, is the story of Tiamat. The atoms of the early solar system are the creation of a star. And then, again, 4.5 billion years ago, 4.75 billion years ago, there was a great explosion of a star that contained in its belly all of the atoms of our bodies. The event of that supernova explosion, it has to be understood as one of the great moments of our lives. Mars, Jupiter, Earth, Venus, all of the planets of our solar system are composed of the same materials. All of them came out of Tiamat. All of them are permeated with the same dynamics. And yet Earth blossoms in this amazing, revelatory event. And what's the difference? The only difference is that Earth is a balanced turbulence. Mars loses it to rigidity. Jupiter loses it to chaos. By remaining in a turbulent, a balanced state, the creative development continues. I like to think of this as an image for the human. What it means to be human. It isn't that we want a stasis or some kind of benign and dull safety. It's more that we want to continue and activate further the ongoing creativity of the universe. And the suggestion from the Earth is that what's required is to remain in the form of this balanced turbulence. This is Earth, lava, molten rock. It's involved with mysterious powers, certainly, but here it is before your eyes, and you just leave it alone, and it turns into this. I don't need any other miracles. I'm stunned forever by this. Thank you.
In the universe story, cosmologists Brian Swimme and Father Thomas Berry describe what scientists have come to see as the mind of the universe, and how for 15 billion years this universe mind proceeded with intention and creativity from a great flaring forth to the development of biological life on Earth. But the 20th century human brain derived from all of that creativity is now in charge of its outcome.
Our challenge is to learn how to interact harmoniously with large-scale dynamics of the planet. in the particular, in the local region, so that the earth can continue to blossom. And the way in which we talk about this in the book is to say that from the beginning, the universe is involved with its own creative development, and its central values are diversity and differentiation. This is something the universe is pressing for, is diversity. Spontaneity, deep interiority, subjectivity. This is a second direction or aim of the universe from the beginning. And a third is communion or community or interrelatedness. The question then would be, how are we as humans, how are we capable of carrying even to a further degree of achievement these primordial desires that are layered into the nature of the universe? To take on these values, right, is to put yourself at odds with a great deal of what's taking place in the contemporary world. At the present time, we are destroying diversity faster than anything has destroyed it in the last 65 million years. You know, throughout the history of life, species go extinct. On the average, one every century, 1,000 years. But now, with our activity, species are going extinct on the average of 10 to 40,000 species a year. We will be remembered forever because of our destruction alone. It doesn't have to be that way.
Moving from destruction to a mode of co-creation with the planet Earth is at the heart of the blueprint for a new kind of human community outlined by Swim and Barry in the Universe Story. The authors unveiled their challenge to all of us at a recent colloquium held at Holy Cross Center for Ecology and Spirituality.
The indications at the close of the 20th century are that we must now enter into a new geobiological as well as a human cultural period that we refer to as the Ecozoic era. But we can only do it if we understand that this is a sacred process, that from the beginning, this story is a psychic spiritual dimension as well as a physical material dimension. This is not just a secular story. This is not just what's called a scientific story. This is the story that we know by looking at the universe. We're not planning simply for a new America. We're not planning for a new human mode of being. We're planning for a planet. We're planning on a scale of tens of millions of years. And we have to have a program. We have to have something on a scale that can carry the majesty of such a task. I'll call it the great work. We're about a great work. We all have our particular work. Some of us work in offices, some of us are teachers, some of us are healers, some of us are in various professions, some of us are farming. We have a variety of occupations. But besides the particular work that we do and the particular lives that we lead, we have a great work that everyone is involved in and no one is exempt from it. And that is the work of moving on from a terminal Cenozoic to the emerging Ecozoic era in the story of the planet Earth, which is the great work.